Hey there, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this week's astrological report. This is for June 9 through June 15 of 2026. So this week we do have a lot going on up in the sky. Here's a list of all the major aspects, and this includes on Tuesday, June 9, we do have the Venus conjunct Jupiter coming exact at the end of Cancer. I'll be talking about the meaning of that in this video. We also have, at the same time though, Mercury forming a first quarter exact square with Saturn later on in the evening here on Tuesday night. It's building up all day long. So kind of two different aspects, one that's considered very positive and supportive, and another one that's a bit challenging. So I'll talk about that. We also have the nodes of fate making the perfect T-square with Uranus this week on Friday, June 12. I talked about that a bit on last week's report. That's where the world is at a crossroads. It's pretty crazy out there. A lot of instability and turbulence and just some surprises and unpredictability has been taking place in a lot of different ways. I'll talk more about it in this report as well. And at the same time, on Friday night, Venus reaches the last degree of Cancer and forms a square with Chiron, also at the last degree of Aries. So it's kind of a critical turning point there for everything that Venus rules, which includes relationship energy and dynamics with people, preferences, money and resource changes will be a part of this week and beyond, because right after that, this weekend on June 13, Venus leaves the sign of Cancer and ingresses Leo for this next transit. So pretty big change there. I'll talk about that in this video and what it might mean. And then we also have a new moon. So the moon will be waning all through the sign of Aries, Taurus, and most of Gemini until that moon reaches the sun for the new moon at the later degrees of Gemini, ruled by Mercury. So I'll be explaining what this brand new cycle is all about that we're going to enter into. And then, by the way, that new moon is on Sunday, June 14. So then on Monday, June 15, Venus forms an in conjunction to the north node of destiny, and then makes a sextile aspect from Leo to Uranus in Gemini. And then by next week, the moon will reach Venus in Leo, and they'll both be opposite Pluto. So I'll talk about that in next week's report. But as soon as Venus enters Leo, it's going to kind of be within orb and building up that opposition to Pluto. So again, a lot is going on for everything that Venus rules, including the general relationship dynamics that are about to change generally for the world, what's going on the world stage between different nation states and deals and negotiations, and then in personal relationships as well. So those are all the major aspects. Welcome to the new subscribers of the last week. Check the description. I write everything out for you with all these aspects and when they come exact and timestamps to follow along. I'll also put the timestamps with these aspects in the comment section as well. All right, so I'm going to start going through the chart day by day and going through all of these aspects. Starting here on Tuesday, June 9, there's a change right off the bat for Tuesday because the moon ingresses into Aries out of Pisces, where it's been the last 2.5 days. So this is generally showing a pretty big energetic mood change, and circumstances begin to change into a new dynamic for the week ahead. And the moon in Aries shows that there's more fire, there's more passion. People generally will be kind of coming out of their own world and behind the scenes, and the sensitivity that's been in the background. We still have a lot of sensitivity because of 3 planets in Cancer, but it's a little bit different with what type of sensitivity with the moon in Pisces versus Aries. This also shows a new phase where people could become a little more impulsive. There's also a stronger need for freedom and independence. But with that said, we have this Mercury building up a square with Saturn all day on Tuesday, and the moon is applying towards Saturn. So that shows that there's still going to be some limitations, some restrictions, some possible frustration for people's mood, in showing like what we're capable of doing or how quickly we can do things that we want, and other serious matters that could be in the background that, again, could show some obstacles that we have to deal with. So I'll talk more about that. Now that the moon is in Aries for the next 2.5 days, it is being ruled by this Mars. that has reached halfway through Taurus at this point. So Mars, it's considered debilitated here still. It's not at its best. It's in the sign of money and resources. I think money and resources in the markets, they're going through some turbulence here and some changes overall. But because this Mars in Taurus is also being ruled by Venus conjunct Jupiter, there's also things here that could be positive about money and resources, and yet some other situations that could show some delays in how soon people are receiving the positivity. So I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But there's kind of, on one hand, there's a lot of possibility of feeling satisfied and abundant, and yet on the other hand, there's some frustrations and some limitations that come along with it. So it all depends on your personal chart and how this aligns with you. Do you have more of the positive side of this or more of the challenging side? Could be a combination of both, depending on your personal birth chart. But the first aspect that the moon makes now that it's in Aries, also showing that, again, things want to start to speed up, but yet I think that that's going to be a part of the frustration because Mars is still not at its best. And again, with Saturn being aspected here, there's a few challenges that could slow things down and show some delays. But the first aspect is the moon making a sextile to this Uranus in Gemini. That's aspecting the nodes of fate. So again, there's been a lot of craziness in the world in different ways. Again, I talked about this last week where there's unpredictability, there's volatility, there's surprising new dynamics, even things out in the streets, and just some chaos here, some craziness that's still kind of shaping the world. It's also about data, information, news. There was also these elections. These kind of things are definitely shaping the world in a fateful way. But the fact that the moon is going to make a sextile, things come into more harmony with new possibilities, how people feel about something. Plus the moon is approaching Neptune at the same time. But this is the moon on the world point, the Aries point. So that usually indicates that there's major world developments happening and a turning point for the rest of the week as the moon has come into this position. Again, showing new options, and this is also showing that if people are more open-minded, flexible and adaptable and more changeable, willing to start things that are different, or just, again, being willing to step outside the box and see new potentials and try new things, that's where there can be an opening to work with some of the frustration that's building up in the background. I still think that this is going to show some issues on the world stage that's continuing because this Uranus in Gemini, T-squared the nodes of fate, is being ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's making that perfect square to Saturn. So this is also talking about travel, transportation, technology. There can be some glitches. There can also just be some mental pressure here that's building up, and some hard news as well is likely. But it's also about how people are thinking, and that's why I say with the sextile from Moon to Uranus, it's an opening, it's an invitation for people to try to think about new possibilities and not get so narrowed in their focus or kind of, the more downer side of people's thoughts and feelings about things as Mercury is squaring Saturn. The moon is also making an inconjunction to the south node in these last 2 degrees of Virgo. So people might also be distracted or have adjustments that have to be made for work on Tuesday. Now, this is super early in the morning when that's happening, so it won't be all day. But right off the bat, first thing on Tuesday, I'm making this video on Monday because I see there's too much here going on Tuesday morning, and I don't want to have to deal with that first thing in the morning. So hopefully I can get this done on Monday and have it ready for you guys on Tuesday. So some adjustments to work, or some adjustments might have to be made about health issues for some people, continuing to work on reorganization, restructuring, looking at management differently, and just looking at the details of things that need change, ongoing change. We're almost done with this Virgo process, but we're still dealing with it right now, and it's still a part of fate and destiny that's shaping the world based on Virgo, Pisces, and Gemini. So some adjustments there, some irritations are possible with that. And then the moon is conjunct Neptune as the day goes on here, which will be late morning into the afternoon, depending on where you live. So moon Neptune on the world point. Again, I think major developments are happening on the world stage, but also there's a lot about money here because, again, this moon is being ruled by Mars in Taurus. Money, resources, your physical life, the material life, people's mood could also be more inclined for indulgences and pleasures in the physical side of, the five senses of being activated here. But I do think there's important things on the world stage about markets and money. And I think that there's still a potential of something really positive that's showing. But there's a combination of both at the same time, of challenge and something supportive here. Plus this conjunction of Venus, Jupiter building up. It's not just a one-day thing because it's a conjunction. It's a new beginning for these two for the next year of what it's talking about. So that's in the background, but the moon Neptune can inspire people's dreams, their feelings about things, their imagination, what they want to start, what they want to go after and create. And again, with the Taurus and then the Venus, Jupiter, people's mood could be for themselves, self-pleasure and their own indulgences for things versus responsibilities or pressure or stress that's also in the background for some people. And then the moon is making a sextile to Pluto up here in Aquarius as the late morning into the afternoon happens. So now circumstances are connecting to the group, the friends, and the community in a better, easier way. There could be a stronger emotional connection for others, but also freedom and independence with these two signs of Aries and Aquarius. Also, those circumstances are connecting to the power dynamic in an easier way, how we feel about the power within the community, what's taking place there, but also connecting to the shadow, what's under the surface, what's hidden, things like that. And then for the rest of the day, we get the two major aspects, Venus conjunct Jupiter, which is going to be exact in the afternoon and evening, depending on where you live. And then the final aspect will be the Mercury Square Saturn. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic considering that this conjunction of Venus and Jupiter in Cancer is being ruled by the moon, which is now kind of also wrapped up in this Mercury Square Saturn. The moon will reach Saturn in the early morning hours, just after midnight on the West Coast. So again, it's kind of connected to Tuesday night into early Wednesday that this moon Saturn is showing, and the moon is squaring Mercury at the same time. Now that's going to be officially on Wednesday morning, but it's kind of carrying over from Tuesday night. So again, it's a very interesting dynamic to have such contrast going on here. So let me move this forward. So the first aspect, Venus crosses over Jupiter here. So this is why degrees are so important when we talk about transits, because not everybody experiences everything that's going on in your personal life, in your own chart. People that do have 25 to 26 degrees of Cancer are most likely to experience the benefit of this. Now, other people as well that could, I think that's the strongest if you have literally 25 to 26 degrees of Cancer. Now, there's orbs of influence that you can try to say, could be relevant for you as well. I can't guarantee it or anything, but I like to use tight orbs. But yeah, there's orbs of influence around these degrees. So secondary is the earth and the water signs around 25 to 26 degrees. But trines and sextiles, they're just showing that there's something there and available. It doesn't always, just happen. Sometimes you have to take the initiative and, tap into where the good stuff of life is. But I think, again, if you do have 25, 26 Cancer, you're finally starting to get something that's more beneficial for you that you weren't totally able to receive last year, because this is also where Jupiter is now entering new territory from its retrograde shadow. I also forgot to say, and I'll talk about this more, but this week Mercury is also entering its retrograde shadow, and that's going to be a part of this Gemini new moon. So I'll speak on that later. But things are wanting to move forward now. The last 5 degrees of Cancer has a rare transit that's happening, and it could be immediate. You could be seeing something here this week, even here on Tuesday or Wednesday. If you have the later degrees of Cancer, then it's until for the rest of June. It all depends on when that will play out for you, based on where Jupiter is. But Venus is crossing those degrees quickly this week. So you could start to see something. Now, I just want to put this out there that if you don't see something really positive about this and you have 26 or 25, 26 degrees of Cancer, keep in mind that it's also a new beginning for these two planets coming together, which speaks more about the next year and what's possible. This could show that symbolic seeds are being planted for something quite positive for you this week, even if you're not seeing the full results just yet. And you might see those results as time goes on throughout the year at some point. So stay positive. I think that it's still going to be a challenge for some people to be in their right mind and stay positive because of this strong counterbalance of Mercury squaring Saturn. And not only that, but I do think that there's a possible delay of what this is talking about for some people. I do think that some people will see some, benefit this week, but because this conjunction of Venus-Jupiter is ruled by the moon applying towards Saturn, it feels like it's not instant gratification, even though the moon in Aries would want something very quickly based on this. But the Saturn component says that patience is required, that there might be something, again, long-term that comes out of this based on future developments that are being seeded this week and beyond. So, that's kind of the background there. And so it is considered a very positive aspect. I just wish that everybody could receive something nice from it, but that's just not how astrology works, unfortunately. And it all depends. That's why, again, I talk about degrees because, the next conjunction of Venus and Jupiter, it'll be in Leo. And that degree in Leo, you'll have to look at your chart. I'm not going to talk about it now. That'll be next year. But each cycle is for different people. Not every cycle is about every single person in the world. But regardless, I still think that wherever you have the sign of Cancer in your birth chart, that's a certain area, that's one of the more positive sides, and Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, it's good for healing. It's good for nurturing self and others and caring about others. But there's just a little bit of a contradiction because the moon is in Aries, which is at odds with the sign of Cancer, and this bigger other aspect of Mercury square Saturn. So Mercury square Saturn, that will be the last aspect for Tuesday night. So that could show, this is a first quarter square, so it also comes back to when Saturn and Mercury were conjunct, also talking about a new cycle. And now they've reached their first quarter where the way people are thinking and their plans for the future and what they need to initiate and start in the bigger context of life is now being challenged. Are some of your past plans and ideas still relevant, or are you starting to think differently? Are you starting to change your mind about some things? This could show some sort of delay that's in place for the next couple of days on different levels of life. So it could affect people's thinking and their mind and their communications. That feels a little heavier, a little more serious, and it's easy for people to get kind of down with this aspect in play. But it's also about the way you're thinking about things. And that's why I was saying you got to be open to thinking differently and being open to trying new ideas and possibilities that weren't available in the past that are now available. So it's like, don't get too narrowed in your thinking. For some people, this can be some hard news. Now, this is exact at 12 degrees and almost 13 degrees. So if you have 12 to 13, 14 degrees of the cardinals, then you're, really probably being affected by this square going on because you're under a rare Saturn transit, and now Mercury's bringing it closer to you with everyday life. So again, roughly 12 to 14 of Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries. So It could also bring up things that you need to kind of think about that are more serious, or there could be some hard news, some hard information that comes your way. You could get a phone call or a text about something. That's always possible with this. That puts some, something a little heavier, that's put some pressure on you. Or if nothing literally is happening, that's a challenge. Again, it could be about how you're thinking about things that you've already been thinking about in the past and wanting to start for the future. And this square between Cancer and Aries, it's a battle between going direct versus being more cautious, sidestepping things, not speaking directly versus this impulsiveness that's building up to speak your mind, so kind of a contradiction in people's thoughts and communication style. It could also show issues in the world because Mercury is ruling this apex of the T-square to the nodes of fate with Uranus. So transportation issues, traveling issues, technology issues, glitches here and there, some other chaotic mental stimulation that's happening that's already been building up last week, this week. There's been a lot of hectic things happening out in the streets, earthquakes in different places, just a lot of mental stimulation that could start to be a little too much for some people. So it could also be people feeling tired, feeling mentally drained, needing to step back a little bit from social media or too much, stimulation of what's happening. In other cases, this could be something about siblings, neighbors, some hard news or a challenge that comes in, in some cases there. But it can show some obstacles, some delays. This is also probably not the best time on Tuesday, even into a little bit of Wednesday, to be doing mercurial things like, applying for a major job or filling out paperwork, dealing with the government. Now, in some cases, you might have to. So if you have no choice, then do it. And because of the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, it could still show that it might have some issues. There might be some complications in the moment here, dealing with paperwork or applying for things or dealing with serious communications with authorities or other stuff like that. But maybe there's going to be a positive result as time goes on because of this Venus-Jupiter planting seeds for something more positive. Plus, the Mercury will reach that point and go retrograde there at the end of June. So whatever comes up here, or these seeds being planted for something positive, is a part of the Mercury retrograde of reflecting on it, reviewing it, or waiting on that process to be developed. But if you have a choice, kind of avoid, again, mercurial things. Even going out and, if you have to run errands, I would kind of avoid that on Tuesday into Wednesday. This Venus-Jupiter in Cancer is much better for your inward life, your inward world, and nurturing and indulging in your own pleasures of life, privately. It could, in some cases, be good for real estate and property if you are dealing with something about, family stuff as well, or property or money in those regards. But because of the Mercury Square Saturn, there could also be delays in a deal or a process, that, again, takes time. Once Mercury gets done with this entire retrograde by the end of July and is kind of moving into Leo by August. So I would say June and July is a big process, also about what people need, their feelings of things, and that's a big part of the mind right now. Mercury is working through emotions and feelings and the need for safety and security and comfort and thinking about home and family and things like that, to be more cautious, to be more reserved. And yet Aries is saying, no, be bold, be brave, take action, initiate something for the bigger, longer term picture. That could be bringing up people's fear and insecurity and worry, or doubts. And again, some people changing their mind or not knowing if they should move forward with something. So I'm kind of looking at it that way. And it will pass. Mercury will move past that. And it'll get easier. So that's Tuesday. I should move along here. And then we get to Wednesday on June 10. And again, the first aspect is the moon reaching Saturn in the overnight hours, squaring Mercury. So it's really reinforcing that tension around communications, delays, obstacles, difficult news, transportation issues. If you do have to travel Tuesday and Wednesday, just plan ahead and put yourself in a good spot. Maybe be flexible and adaptable to changing situations. It's not going to be for every single person, but just to be on the safe side, you should definitely prepare for some sort of obstacle and delay here, and pressure and stress that's very strong in the overnight hours for people. And the moon, the moon Mercury square, they're on two different pages here, how people are feeling and their needs and their emotions and their thoughts. They're clashing. Again, a lot about that Aries versus Cancer. Go direct, sidestep, play it safe, be brave, take a risk. But I also think it's, again, Saturn saying that there's something here that's happening that's going to take time before you see the most positive results based on whatever's playing out Tuesday into Wednesday morning. And then the midday here, there's mostly difficult aspects on Wednesday besides this one opening of the moon making a sextile to the sun in Gemini. And that's going to be about midday, late morning, midday, depending on where you live here, as the sun is coming into the 20th degree. So moon sextile sun shows that the inner feelings, the circumstances, the mood is generally connecting well with where people are focused in Gemini, which usually is showing also people are a little more scattered. There's, a variety of different things that people are focused on and doing. And the moon here is now starting to separate from Saturn. That shows a strong emotional need for action, freedom, independence, but it's still being ruled by a little bit of a stubbornness here with Mars in Taurus. Things are still a little bit sluggish, not as quick as we would like, with Saturn and Mars influencing things. But there's a moment for a few hours, again, around midday, where there's an opening to feel a little more comfortable with what's happening. But you can see in the background, there's still a lot of tension here. Mercury is still, even by midday on Wednesday, still within orb of that Saturn. And the nodes of fate are building up to become exact with this craziness in the world and news and information and just this instability that's showing, that's shaping the world in this fateful way. And then the last aspect is the moon making a square to Jupiter, and then the following day it'll be with Venus. So now the moon comes into this aspect. And remember, the moon is ruling this conjunction. So moon square Jupiter by Wednesday night, again, shows that things are a little bit over the top. There's big energy, big mood for things, big appetite for things, so to speak, seeking something to be fulfilled. Now that can be good or bad, depending. If you're doing something in a more negative way, it can be too much of a good thing too. But it can also show, there's generosity here still with this Venus, Jupiter. So people could be kind of overdoing something positive too. But that moon is also applying towards this critical Chiron at 29 degrees. And 29 Aries is not a good degree for the United States. A lot of harsh things have happened with that degree. So, Venus is about to square that. The moon is about to come over that. So I still feel like there's some critical things happening that, isn't just 100% positive in the world right now. But it doesn't have to be every single person, being affected in some awful way. Okay, so again, things are a little bit over the top, and people's emotional reactions and their feelings could just be a little bit out of balance here on Wednesday night. So get careful of your impulsiveness and what you get yourself wrapped up into emotionally or passionately, and just recognize where it might need to be toned down a little bit. But I still feel like there's a lot about these squares from the moon in Aries to the Cancer about being ruled by this Mars and Taurus, and then the Mars and Taurus being ruled by Venus with Jupiter. So tension can sometimes show that people need something. They're seeking something to be fulfilled, to be pleasured by, and maybe there's a little too much tension in that process where it's difficult to be fulfilled and satisfied, and so there's like a need for more and more of something. So it may not just be totally awful of what's going on. For some people, they could be in their own home, and just needing something, not being satisfied with something, and then causing them to go over the top with what they're trying to be fulfilled by. So that's probably in some of the cases here for the next couple of days. All right, then moving this forward, we get to Thursday on June 11. The moon crosses that Chiron, conjunct Chiron, as Venus is square. No, the moon is square Venus. I'm sorry. The moon, Chiron is, what's going on here? Moon square Venus. So first the moon is square Venus, then reaches the conjunction with Chiron. So that just kind of adds to what I already said about Wednesday, how, people's needs, people's desires are clashing. Sometimes moon square Venus doesn't feel completely valued or loved as much. There could still be a strong need for love and pleasure, but with the moon reaching Chiron in this critical degree, there's a sense of urgency for something to change that will lead to a big change in relationship dynamics, money and resources, as Venus will be changing signs. But Chiron is being activated, so people's wounds, people's vulnerabilities, their insecurities, how they feel about themselves could be triggered here, their confidence level. And then, as the day goes on, there's going to be another mood change as the moon will ingress Taurus. And this is where the moon is much happier. But as I say, every month now for years, as the moon goes through Taurus and Scorpio, it has to square Pluto. Every month for years. So it's a whole new dynamic that we're getting used to more and more of. So even though the moon is very strong in Taurus, it still runs into complications of Pluto here. But now that the moon is in Taurus, it does show that things, want to get, again, even talk about more pleasure, more sensual vibes. It's the material world, so things want to get more physical, more material, more grounded, more stable, more secure. The moon shows that there could be even better opportunity for this last bit of Venus-Jupiter here at the end of Cancer to be kind of more nurturing, more caring, more loving now. But also, again, a lot about money and resources that's going on in the markets and in the world. Things are starting to shift for a new phase that's coming in for, what will be a part of the next few months that's developing. And keep in mind that, Gemini is a dualistic energy, and that's the apex of this craziness. So there can be all kinds of different things happening all at the same time. Some positive, some not so positive. There's variety here. So the moon wants to keep things stable and nice and pleasurable for all involved and kind of slow things down a little bit now from that emotional need for all the fiery, passionate action with the moon going through Aries for the first part of the week. And also, because the moon is being ruled by Venus and Venus is starting to reach the last critical degrees of a change, this moon phase through Taurus is going to lead to a financial change. Generally speaking, the energetics about money and resources and how people are feeling about that and what's next. That will show more and more as time goes on here. But the moon also enters a trine and a sextile with the nodes of fate at 2 degrees. So this is a better connection to fate and destiny that's playing out, but we still have that background T-square to the nodes of fate. So it's a very fateful day too, and just all week long. But I would say there's a lot of fate and destiny playing out for Thursday and Friday. But, it's not just those 2 days, but that's when the aspects are perfect. So I still think last week's fateful, this week's fateful. Every day of the week there could be something going on that's shaping the long-term future for the world. But because it's in the sign of Taurus, again, I think there's a lot about money here that's being shaped. What banks are doing, what the markets are doing, any kind of new information that's coming out in policies or anything like that on the world stage could be showing things are shaping the financial situation for the future. This is also a point where this is a serious time for the United States right now because of Saturn at 13 to 14 degrees aspecting the natal United States Sun square Saturn aspect. This is also the opposition of the Saturn to the United States, which is a major turning point for policies and rules and laws that have been building up for years. It doesn't always mean like an awful situation, but it's a serious time of what's happening, and the mood in the United States can be a little more serious during this time period. Plus that Mercury, that Mercury Square Saturn is definitely connected to the United States because the Mercury is going over the United States sun at the same time this week. So we're talking about major United States developments on a really serious level. But the last aspect for Thursday is the moon in Taurus making the square to Pluto. So this shows some instability, some intensity. I always say a square to Pluto is like a forced change, a forced transformation that's taking place on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, depending on where you're at. The mood, again, wants to keep things on a more material, surface, earthly, grounded level, and yet we're picking up on deeper dynamics with the group, the community, friends, and the undercurrents, manipulation could be happening here, even financial manipulation on some levels on Thursday afternoon, although by the time that this is exact, the markets will be closed. As far as Bitcoin goes, Saturn is also squaring the Bitcoin sun that's in Capricorn on this level 2. So you have to be patient when it comes to Bitcoin. And, I'm not going to get into too much details with that because we've already missed the high was already taken place months ago. So now we're at the bottom here. In fact, Bitcoin just hit support level. And so some of this recent sell-off is generally a good time to be, I don't want to tell people what to do about buying, but, it's a cycle. These cycles play out even in the main stock market. Everybody freaks out when there's a sell-off, but yet those are the golden opportunities to buy back in. But the people that are too fearful, they usually miss out, because when the scale is on a lot of fear in the markets, that's always the golden time for the true investors for the long term. But it's not about what's instant. It's thinking long term. So you have to make those decisions for yourself, because I can't tell people what to buy or not do. I can just kind of highlight what's going on here. But, I still feel like there should be some counterbalance to some of the negative going on in the markets because of this Jupiter-Venus. I just don't think it's quite as stable as we would like because of other factors here. And ultimately, again, we're headed for a turning point just around general money and resource value and change coming up. But I'm still not looking at, what everybody likes to predict, everybody loves to predict all the worst things of life with astrology. Oh, another recession and, another major crash. I guess those things are more exciting and get the clicks and all that. And some of them truly believe that. But I'm still not really seeing that. So now that doesn't mean long term, like 2028. Now that's a different story. That's a couple years from now, though. So 2028 is definitely something different than what we're dealing with here in 2026 when it comes to markets and money and stuff. So we'll be talking about that in the future if I'm still doing astrology by that point. So again, the moon square Pluto just shows some turbulence here. Some shadow is being activated. And there could also be some issues about funding and money and resources with groups and community, certain things like that playing out, or even on personal levels, friends and money and kind of these undercurrents of shadow and power plays that could be in the background. But that's only for a few hours. It doesn't last very long, but it is the last aspect for Thursday until we get to Friday on June 12. And this is when this fateful aspect is exact of the nodes of fate T square Uranus on June 12th on Friday morning. But it doesn't mean that it's completely done on Friday. It's still going to be in play, for this whole week, every day of the week. And again, this is what I've been talking about since last week, where the world is at this fateful crossroads. Any kind of, data, information, election stuff going on, news, technology, the local streets, the local area, all these things are shaping something that's quite fateful. But it's also aspecting Virgo, work, changes in work policies, systems, organization, management are possible in some cases. Issues with, again, siblings for some people, neighborhood, changes of the local streets, health issues. There could be some data, some information that's somehow shaping the world about health news, real or not. And then to Pisces, what's hidden behind the scenes, scandals, conspiracies, the hidden dynamics behind the scenes, the collective unconsciousness being affected by mental stimulation, too much chaos for a lot of people that could be tired, and then other things that are just unpredictable, volatile here, that have fateful results are possible. Now it's being ruled by this Mercury, which is at 15.5 degrees at this point, 2 degrees separated from Saturn as this aspect is perfect. So it's still in the background, which shows that there could still be, transportation, traveling things, and other chaotic events. But at the same time, the moon is now forming a sextile with Mercury. And that is the main easiest aspect of the day. It's really the only easy aspect. Everything else here on Friday is hard aspects, including the moon conjunct Mars. So there's a moment here, but this moment between moon and Mercury is pretty early on. It's first thing in the morning, where people's feelings are trying to help stabilize the mood, the thoughts, the feelings about things that have been under pressure and stress all week long. So there could be a moment of ease here for a little bit, but then the moon is conjunct Mars also in the morning hours into the afternoon, which shows a lot of tension. Now, Taurus is more stable, more secure, slower. It's more grounded. So it's not like overly impulsive, but it's still Moon and Mars that people have to be careful of their emotional impulsiveness and emotional responses. So it can also be stubbornness, fixed. This is a fixed conjunction. So maybe something needs to happen. Maybe there is a need to take action, to start something, to be doing something here, but there could also be a counterbalance that people feel more frustrated or are held back, or it's a little difficult. It's a slower pace, even though things want to be in a faster pace here. 1 second, be right back. Been getting a lot of disruption and static in my recordings. Part of the issue that I'm going through with Saturn, but Mercury. Okay, so there is that aspect. But this conjunction of Moon, Mars is ruled by Venus, which has reached this last critical degree on Friday and beginning to square Chiron. So unfortunately, that doesn't look very good for possible world developments or accidents or other difficult situations that could bring up people's insecurities and even wounding. But it feels like it's also even financial a little bit here, value, money, resource-wise. Something's reaching a critical turning point, a sense of urgency for something to happen, something to change. by Friday. And then the last aspect is literally Venus squaring Chiron, which will be exact on Friday night, but it's all day long building up. So again, this is going to really, from this point forward, change the overall relationship vibes in the air. And that includes any kind of deals, negotiations, or at a critical point. But I still feel like this can cause some issues with people. So you have to be mindful of this in your own personal relationships, especially if you have 29 degrees of one of the cardinal signs. I would say even 0 degrees of the fixed signs, but it's exact here at 29 cardinal. So 29 Cancer, 29 Libra, 29 Capricorn, and 29 Aries, because you're already under a longer influence of a rare Chiron transit to that point, back and forth until next year. And this is being triggered here. It's also the first quarter of Venus and Chiron, where they met up for a new cycle together, how to heal relationship. But now that need for seeds that were planted about healing one's confidence, how they feel about beauty and pleasure and money, it's running into a complication, a crisis moment here. So if you feel it, if you feel the sensitivity, the vulnerability, insecurity, or anything like that, with other people, socially, even with family stuff for some people here, tread carefully. Don't cause a wound if you don't need to by being overly impulsive. Now, luckily, though, the moon is still exalted and it's past Mars and it's coming in to a sextile with Venus and Jupiter. This is why astrology can be complicated. It's never just one dynamic. There's always these contradictory dynamics playing out all at the same time. But that is still good news that there can be a positive result. Yes, there can still be something sensitive coming up for people here. And it has something to say about, beauty and value and love and things like that, where there could be a little bit of that sensitivity, but it could, as the day goes on or the night here on Friday night, this is pretty late that this is happening, so the moon won't make the sextile until the following day on Saturday early morning hours. So I'd say Friday night looks critical in the world, especially socially, relationship-wise. Tread carefully in your personal relationships, or if you're out and about having a good time. All right, so moving forward, we get past that, and then we get to Saturday on June 13, and this is the big change. Venus ingresses Leo now for this new transit. And again, Venus has to make a lot of different aspects this for the rest of the weekend into next week, talking about these changes in relationship. And what it says is relationship is leaving a sensitive point and entering a more bold point that needs more attention, that has something more direct that's needed in love and relationship, or just general relationships as well. Now it's fiery, now it's passionate, coming out of this need to love through nurturing and care and tenderness and more inward and private. Now it wants to be more social. Now it's connecting to Aquarius. These two signs, Leo and Aquarius, are very social. So I also think that this is speaking about on the world stage, and maybe even the United States, but it could be anywhere in the world in different situations, about a woman coming into some sort of a change. With this change of Venus from Cancer to Leo, I feel like there's a strong possibility there's a new beginning for a famous person, maybe a woman, or it could be political in some way. That's starting to get the light and the attention. Now Venus in Leo is being ruled by the sun in Gemini, which is about to get a new moon and this big new beginning. So again, I do feel like there's some sort of a new beginning for just the general feminine energy as well, and what's next for the feminine energy and love and relationship and pleasure and what's needed within relationship dynamics. Venus in Leo needs more attention than Venus in Cancer. Now, Leo is a great sign in a lot of ways. Leo has passion and heart, and Leo is a very giving sign, but it needs it in return. It's like Venus in Cancer can be more loving and giving in a way that's more nurturing and caring for others, and it's more emotionally driven, whereas this is more heart and passionate and bold love. And there's also going to be a stronger desire for people to have more fun, more of a good time. Getting out now, is where the social pleasure energy comes. And now Leo gets the attention. Leo gets the beauty, the attraction, generally speaking, in this next phase as Venus is in transit through Leo. So it all depends on the degree that you have in Leo, of when you'll get the better things from Venus, from other people, or again, more attention, more love, more passion. But Venus in Leo needs to be treated like the queen. Now, that's generally speaking, because there can be counterbalances to that in a personal birth chart. But Venus here shows that now people need to be put a little more up on a pedestal, taken out, dressing up, having a good time, treated like a queen, basically. And yet we have this opposition building to Pluto, which is going to cause a lot more drama within relationships building up from this point forward, and especially by next week when it's exact. And pride, there's more pride in the feminine now. There's a little more of an ego, but there's also a playfulness because it comes back to the sun in Gemini and this new cycle that's about to start. And the sun in Gemini can be more, playful and witty and fun and wanting to be, taking short trips here with the Gemini component. So something's about to change. So in your own personal relationships, especially if you're a guy and you're wanting to make plans and stuff with your woman, it's like you got to change it up now and get things to be a little more exciting, a little more fun, get out a little more, be willing to do something that's a little more social and visible and fun and creative. And yeah, it can also increase people's desires for more fun, creativity, dance and play and those kind of things. And I think the seriousness has eased up, now that Mercury is further away from that square to Saturn. I think people are feeling a little bit better. Plus now, Mercury and Mars are still within an orb of a sextile. But Mercury is also entering its retrograde shadow from this point forward. So things that are on the mind, things that are showing in the world, things that have been coming out here and that will be a part of this next Gemini cycle will be connected to something bigger that will take the next, by this point, a month and a half to play out before it moves forward into new territory. So a lot of reflection and review, and again, things that start to show from this point forward will be connected to what people are going to process and reflect on or wait on something in a bigger way. And I'm not one of those people that think everything goes too wrong with Mercury retrograde. Now it's in its shadow, so it's technically not retrograde, so we don't have to make it too extreme with the whole retrograde thing. But anything that's extreme or chaotic, I wouldn't blame it on Mercury at this point. I would blame it on Uranus here with the T-square going on. And then anything earlier in the week, yeah, you can blame that on Mercury square Saturn. But it's not just because it's in its retrograde shadow that everything has to be terrible. In fact, I think things are getting better at this point compared to earlier in the week. Relative, But people's minds are still connected to Mars and physical things, material world, money and resources are still a need. Safety, security, comfort is still a thing. People's emotions and feelings are driving how people are thinking still, which will be a part of this new cycle in Gemini as well. So again, a big change for Venus, and then the moon also changes signs into Gemini. So we do see kind of a vibe change here for sure on Saturday morning to be more outward, playful, having some fun. But the moon is also now conjunct Uranus in this T-square with the nodes of fate. So we have another round of this activation of the instability, the craziness, the changes, needing to be more flexible and adaptable to things. But the moon here is now in a mutual reception with Mercury because the moon is in Mercury sign and Mercury's in the moon sign, and that mutual reception between the two is going to be a part of the Gemini new moon coming up. So they are now working better together, how people are feeling and how people are thinking. There is still a component of emotions that are driving thoughts and the need for safety, security, and comfort and playing it safe and being more cautious. But now there's more of a willingness to open up a little more, be a little more changeable, flexible, and adaptable, and change ideas and plans. That kind of begins this new cycle that's building up. This is the dark moon phase of the last cycle that's closing out. So we're preparing energetically for a big new beginning. But I still feel like this is a little bit of a wild card here on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. That's still fateful and destined and changeable. The mood is more changeable now, but because the moon and Venus are in harmony, that's a part of it. Moon sextile Venus in these new signs, there's a change of mood and preferences and desires for people that are more passionate and outward and playful and more fun and creative. And then, the moon with the Uranus, with the nodes of fate, a fateful day on Saturday. And then the moon is connecting to Neptune and Pluto, which from this point forward, there's this minor grand trine that's going to be coming exact in July. It's not perfect yet, but it's coming within orb, and the moon kind of activates that. Now that Neptune is at 4 degrees of Aries, Pluto is going to be backing up to 4 degrees of Aquarius, and the moon, and then Uranus eventually get to 4. But the moon is kind of connecting that minor grand trine of this really rare dynamic in the world for the next 2 years. That's shaping it's a part of this bigger process of shaping the global reality into this whole new different dynamic that we've already been getting glimpses of since last year a little bit, that we're already seeing, with all these major changes around the world. So the moon is in a better way with the dreams, with the community, the technology, the social energy, science, transportation and traveling could start to ease up now. But maybe there's still things that could be unpredictable here with this for a little bit more. But now that the moon and Mercury are in a mutual reception and Mercury is further away from that square to Saturn, I think things probably are better compared to earlier in the week. So again, we're getting a glimpse of new possibilities, new dynamics, both on a personal level and what we can do differently in this next phase of life and what the world is doing differently. Let me check my time here. All right, so moving forward, we get to the following day on Sunday, June 14, and this is basically just 2 aspects, the new moon in Gemini, and right before that happens, the moon is sextile Saturn. So it's the dark moon into the new moon for most of Sunday. And the new moon will be exact. Well, also the sextile to Saturn adds more emotional stability and openness to change and working with any kind of restrictions or limitations in a better way. And then the moon makes that exact conjunction with the sun at 24 degrees. Let me just align it perfectly. So 24 degrees, 3 minutes of Gemini is the exact new moon. So again, degrees matter. Check your chart. Do you have one of the 4 angles at 24 Gemini, or do you have a personal planet at 24 Gemini? If you do, especially an inner planet, then this new cycle is going to affect you in a major way, some sort of a major change for you, a new beginning in that, whatever that planet or angle is in your chart. If you don't have anything here at 24 Gemini, then you just have to look at your chart and what is Gemini for you? What area of life is that? That's where there's a general new beginning for the next 12 months in that area of the chart. And again, this new moon, it doesn't have any, it has some wider orbs, like there's a sextile, an applying sextile to Chiron. So there's a potential that this next cycle that we enter into can have kind of an ending in a temporary way, the beginning of the end of this Chiron transit in Aries that we've been experiencing for the last 8 years. There's going to be a new Chiron transit coming in later on, as Chiron will come into Taurus, but it'll come back to Aries and finalize that before it's all said and done. So we're not completely done with it, but there can be a sense that we're starting to be prepared to end some of these issues that we've been experiencing in Aries for the last 8 years, that this new cycle will kind of prepare us for in a way that can have, again, beginning to heal where we had all the Aries issues, but then we have new wounds and new healing to deal with in Taurus for the next 7 years, but not totally from this point forward, but hope you get my drift there. Now, so that's one applying aspect in a wider orb, and it's also definitely not really connected to Saturn at this point, so I don't really look at that. That's basically it. So there's really not a major aspect going on here, but there is this mutual reception to Mercury. Mercury's in charge of this new beginning that we're starting in Gemini, and Mercury's in Cancer. So this whole cycle of Gemini still has a major connection to your Cancerian area of life, which generally is about safety, security, comfort. Again, even healing. There's a need for healing in this cycle. The way we're thinking, our mind, our perceptions of things. And because the moon and Mercury are in mutual reception, it shows that the moon is stronger than it otherwise would be, and now Mercury is stronger than it otherwise would be. So there's more potential for success within this next cycle, but it's also, Mercury is in its retrograde shadow. So the things that start in this new beginning are going to be a lot about what we start to process, reflect on, review, go back and finish things that have already been coming up in the past. And this also will transition into Cancer season. So it still has a lot about home and family, safety issues, being more guarded and protective. It deals with the homeland of the United States in a major way. It deals, even other countries. It's about the homeland in general. That's part of what Cancer is, your own home and family and your personal level, and then on the nation states, the homeland. But, it all depends on your birth chart, too, of what you have in your fourth house of home. But generally speaking, there's a lot about home and family stuff and how people are thinking about it all and what needs to continue to be a part of that thought process and for your long-term future based on the Mercury retrograde until we get to August. Basically, we can start finally moving forward from that once we get to eclipse season. But it's a strong cycle because of that mutual reception and no hard aspects, that this cycle is talking about. Now, there will be aspects as the cycle goes forward, including, when the moon comes into Cancer, it has to square all that Aries, and it brings up that challenge, that tension that we've already been dealing with between Aries and Cancer. Again, what the directness, the initiation, the bravery, and the courage that needs to happen to start new things for this new era of life versus playing it safe and being more guarded and protective and sidestepping issues and being more emotional and vulnerable. And, so it's still going to bring up a lot about this challenge on what we need to do, but that's a part of the reflection process. But generally, it's still rooted in Gemini, which is a cycle that's generally more about a variety of different things that are going to happen. It's more intellectual. It's about communications. And now this is a cycle where we have Uranus in Gemini. So it's still about this revolutionary new cycle, these new thoughts, these new ideas, new technologies, changes in the streets and the local environment, that are going to be building up as a part of this next cycle. But again, if you have 24 Gemini, you are definitely a part of this in a big way of what's going to change in the next month for you personally. And then also 24 Virgo, 24 Sagittarius, and 24 Pisces have to deal with it, being more flexible and adaptable to this new cycle that's going to put more tension on you if you have an angle or a personal planet of one of the other mutable signs at 24 degrees. And it's more flowing and easy for people that have 24 Libra, and give or take orbs. I'm just saying exactly it's 24. 24 Libra, 24 Aquarius, 24 Aries, 24 Leo. Things can be more flowing, more smooth in this new cycle for you. But you could have this in a more smooth flowing way, but then you could have other transits at the same time that are challenging. And that's why, again, astrology can be complex. And you have to really know your own chart to really figure it out. Okay, so that's the new moon there on Sunday. Moving forward, going back to the hour, the moon will be changing signs as we get to Monday on June 15. We start things off with Venus making an inconjunction to the North Node of Destiny. So there's things about money, resources, and relationships that have changed flavors now, and people's general preferences have changed. That's also having to adjust to something hidden behind the scenes, or distractions, or other things that are happening that are private, that we may not be clear about, that are also shaping the long-term future. And then the moon is making the sextile to that Chiron at the last critical degree. And that's what I talked about, how this new Gemini cycle does have a healing component to it, about how people feel about themselves and their thinking process. And then the moon will change signs into Cancer as the day goes on for Monday morning. Now the moon is strong in its own sign of Cancer, and it'll be here for the next 2.5 days, now waxing forward, building into something. We're still in the new moon phase, though, of symbolic seeds are being planted for what's going to be developing over the next 6 months. And the moon makes an easy alignment with the nodes of fate. So again, there's a lot about the future that's being shaped from behind the scenes. But now that the moon is in Cancer, it kind of reinforces, again, the home, the family vibes, the need for safety and comfort and emotions and feelings and healing and kind of the inward world. And people, and just a more like nurturing emotional phase and more private and inward. So in this phase, though, it's a combination of the outward life versus a pull to the inward life. But now we once again have 3 points in Cancer. So we still have a lot of emotional, sensitive energy here and this pull to the inward life. But yet there's still a lot of kind of crazy, exciting things, and personal desires are still in the more outward Leo vibe of creativity and play and self-expression and romance. And, these new dynamics are still building up in the more outer life too. And then there's only, this hard aspect. The moon is square Neptune, which can just add to some confusion, some doubt, some sensitivity on Monday afternoon. People's feelings might not be clear. There can be some shady stuff going on some level. Are people totally being open and honest? Or again, there could just be some confusion or doubt or uncertainty for a few hours here based on a changing mood, changing circumstances on Monday. And then the moon is also in conjunct to Pluto, having to adjust to the outer world versus the inner world, the sensitive side of life versus the power plays, the shadow, the undercurrents within community, politics, science, friends. We're picking up on it emotionally. It's hard to escape that intensity in the world as the moon makes that in conjunction. And then the last aspect for the week report here on Monday evening is Venus forming the sextile to Uranus. So this Venus shows, again, people's preferences and desires are very different now. They're more open to something new and exciting and something more changeable and playful, and yet the comfort level, the mood is not really on board with that. The mood is more inward and sensitive and nurturing and caring and loving. And Venus is still very loving in Leo, don't get me wrong. Very loving, in fact. But it has pride, it has ego, it needs to be loved in return. It can't just be one-sided. And I still think, though, that there could be something new and exciting that's also fateful in relationships and money on Monday, June 15. So in some cases, this can be like some new exciting experience or some new exciting person that you meet or come across here. something, is possible with that sextile. And also Venus is connecting to the mind, communications and networking and, something like that. But at the same time, Venus is now entering the third degree, which is within orb of this opposition to Pluto. That will be exact by Wednesday when the moon reaches Venus, both at 5 degrees opposite Pluto. That's going to show, again, I think something about a woman, a famous person, a political woman, something here that's going to start getting the spotlight this week into next week, most likely. Now, it could also come with some shadow and some power plays or even something extreme and dramatic that could come about from it by next week on Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday. But I think it's going to be kind of day by day building up into this new dynamic, especially by the end of this week, into the weekend and next week. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's what I have for you. So if you like my report, hit that thumbs up. I appreciate it. And wishing you the very best. Take good care.